Hello and welcome. Thank you for taking part in the Fasten Off Yarn-a-Long by watching this designer interview. I'm Josiane, my pronouns are she, her, and today I'm happy to be meeting Tina from Prism Handiworks. Tina, could you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your design business?
Sure. So I am a physical therapist by trade, and I've really enjoyed my time with that. But I also started knitting while I was in physical therapy school. So I've been knitting for about 20 years now. And I just have found myself drawn to design to kind of expand upon the creative process of knitting itself. I'm more of a process knitter than a project knitter. And so it's been really fun to learn more about all that goes into designing and pattern writing and, really preparing something for the maker.
So for you, designing is really about the process and not, do you start with an idea of what you want the end result to look like? Or do you start with an idea of what you want the process to feel like?
It's a really great question. So I find that I'm kind of initially inspired by the yarn that I'm kind of eyeing for a design. Based on the colors, I might get an idea of what kind of feel I want the project to have. And then from there, I find that I like to include some sort of interesting, unique aspect to it, like a kind of basic stitch is kind of the main feature, but then there's something else to add a little interest, not only visually, but in terms of the process. I really hope that the makers who design or excuse me, make with my patterns find that they're trying out a new technique and that it is more accessible to them than they expected.
Mm, okay, so there's an element of it that is about makers learning something as well
Mm-hmm.
for you.
Yeah.
So you want them to be able to grow their skills through working your designs.
Yes.
Why is that important to you?
I think it comes from the fact that as a physical therapist, I do teaching all day long
Mm.
for exercises, teaching people about their body. And so I think that that's just kind of my presentation style is to just be like, what's the interesting part of this? What is important information? And how can someone expand their skills and knowledge in a comfortable way? Because when I'm teaching someone an exercise, I'm really having to make sure that it's not just that they're doing what I want them to do, but they're actually going to do it. So, can I make sure that it's one that's accessible to them in terms of how I present the information visually or with my hand placements? And so, it's really important to me to try to give good instructions for those techniques in my patterns as well.
So accessible and comfortable. That's
Exactly.
interesting.
Yeah.
I like that. And is there anything that makes your designs unique? Or is there any underlying theme, something that we can find
Well, I'm still a very
running
new
through?
designer. So
Yeah.
my catalog at this point is two patterns
Mhm.
that have been released, and both of those patterns feature lateral braids. It's just a technique that I found myself interested in trying, and when I started researching it, I was like, wow, that's not nearly as difficult as I thought it was going to be, and so it kind of became a design feature in my first two shawls that I released.
Interesting. So it was something that you liked and wanted to introduce other knitters to.
Yeah, and it was really interesting because learning how to do the lateral braids, I came across different instructions from different sources. And so it was also an opportunity for me to take what I've learned through the years knitting and see, what felt like a good blend or a good fit. And I even came up with a slightly different way of doing the braid that felt just a little easier, made a little neater project from my point of view. And I've actually since figured out how to do a lateral braid from the wrong side. So it ends up going the opposite direction of the one that you make from the right side.
Interesting. That's so cool. Um, so your sources of inspiration, so far you've told us about the yarn, the technique. Is there anything else? When you have the yarn, when you have the technique, how do you decide what it will look like in the end? Or
It
is there
kind of
anything
comes
else that inspires you for the final look of the thing?
sometimes I'll get ideas for textures from seeing like other things that people are making or wearing. But I'm a big fan of color. I like to knit with color. I like to look at color. I like to refer to my stash as my personal rainbow, where I can just see the things that called to me and just gave me a certain feeling. And one of those things is really trying to come through with that in the design when I feature that yarn, because I want to express like with this, for example, the soft colors of it. I wanted a project or a shawl that was a little softer in terms of it, had a little more daintiness to it. So I put like the picot edge on it, that kind of idea, because I felt like it really featured the yarn, but also in this case, it was inspired by one of my favorite holiday movies, and I really wanted to connect with how that holiday movie makes me feel as well.
Mm-hmm. And could you please show us, your designs or something that you would
Yeah,
like to highlight?
I'd be so glad to. Well, I'm wearing my next shawl that I'll be releasing, or little shawlette that I'll be releasing. It's made from a sock set that I purchased, and it's got an I-cord edging that's added on with the contrast color, and then it has a picot bind off featuring the same contrast color. And then just to kind of keep the body simple, I alternated sections of garter stitch and then kind of a mesh lace motif.
Mm,
Um, my first couple of shawls, as I mentioned, were ones that featured lateral braids. And so I have my very first one, which I called my startup shawl because I was starting my business. Naming, I think, might be the hardest thing for me sometimes when it comes to naming the projects. And so, again, this one was inspired by really wanting to make something that I felt showcased this particular sock set, which is a much busier color palette. And so I wanted to really allow that to shine, but also still bring in that contrasting mini, because I love sock sets. I think they're beautiful. I love seeing what the dyer wanted the yarn to be paired with,
mhm.
but featuring it in a shawl, because I'm not a big sock knitter, is kind of another little passion there.
Fantastic. It looks great. You did a great job of using that variegated yarn. Sometimes it can be a challenge finding,
Yeah.
good designs for variegated yarns. Um, could you tell us what you find most challenging in the designing process?
Well, naming would definitely be at the top of the list, I think. Eventually I get there, but kind of coming up with ideas feels challenging and daunting. And then, the first writing of a pattern is very, very rough. And I still think I'm trying to come up with what my exact process for that is. The first time I designed and wrote a pattern, I had already made the shawl and made some notes along the way, but I hadn't really written out anything. And my tech editor, bless her, was just super supportive and really like cleaning up that product and making it really great for my testers, and then also for future purchasers of the pattern. Um, so I'd say those are kind of the biggest things. And then the second shawl was a little more like fleshed out. And then I had like a rough draft of the pattern. And then it's nice to go back and make my sample, because that's where inevitably where I find like, oh, that's not clear, or I forgot to make this step indicated here. So so far I feel like that's kind of the better way to go, is get a rough draft, rough idea, and then fine tune from there.
Yeah, starting with something, it's always easier to then go back and
Yeah.
yeah, change. And what part of designing is the most satisfying for you?
I think for me, it's really seeing what people do with the pattern, whether they stick to, say, the two colors sock set, or I had one tester who used just a bunch of different scrap yarns for kind of each section through this shawl. I love seeing how people put their own twist on my idea, because as a maker, I also love putting my own twist on someone else's idea and seeing what I can come up with and making it mine. And I really want people to take the pattern I've given them and make the thing theirs. So that's kind of why I came up with the name a little bit. Like, I love rainbows. That's definitely one of them. And, you know, prisms, it's like, I love the idea of someone taking my idea, putting it through their lens and seeing what comes out on the other side.
Mm, yeah, so what color they will, not just the literal color, but metaphorically, you know, them putting their own colors on
Yes,
the on it.
exactly. Yep.
Awesome. So you've given us a sneak peek of what we're going to see from you next. So this is, have you found a name for this new Charlotte?
I did name this one. I named this one Romancing Judy. It was inspired by a dress that a character wears in the movie White Christmas in a dance scene, and the character's name is Judy. And so I decided to kind of lean into the fact that I was, again, kind of going for a little more feminine look potentially with the shawl, and just kind of landed on that name.
Mm-hmm. And do you have an idea roughly when we should expect it to come out?
Yeah, actually, testers should be finishing up really soon, and then it'll go to final tech edit. So I'm planning on releasing it around December 19th. That'll be about 1 year, actually, since I released my first project, my first pattern.
Fantastic. We'll keep an eye out for it. And finally, what's the best way to keep in touch with you and find out about your new designs?
So I always aim to send out a newsletter to my list members when I have a new design that I'm seeking testers for, as well as when I'm releasing a new design. My newsletter subscribers always get 30% off the new design. I want to make sure that they're getting that access that they want and or maybe no longer want, but have the option of. And so I try to do that with every release. And then I'm on Instagram too, not as active there lately, but I do usually try to post when I'm releasing a project, a design.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Tina, for giving us this opportunity to get to know you better. And many thanks to everyone who watches this interview too. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll check out our other designer interviews. The Fasten Off Yarn-a-Long keeps going until December 31st, 2025, and it's never too late to join. So do check out our schedule for more events and activities. If you're seeing this video after the end of the event, please sign up for our newsletter to be notified when the next edition starts. Find the links in the description below, and we'll put Tina's links as well, so you can easily find everything about her. Thanks again, Tina, and happy crafting!
Thank you.